There is a berry that grows in pure saltwater soil, where no other plant survives. Its oil contains all 4 omega fatty acids, 3, 6, 7, and 9, in a single plant. No other plant on Earth does this. Sea buckthorn oil has been used for thousands of years in Southeast Asia and Europe as a natural remedy. Healthier than canola, grows where canola dies. And the oil industry has never once put it on a grocery shelf. Stay with me? The berry is called sea buckthorn, Hippophae, rhamnoids. It grows as a dense, thorny shrub covered in narrow silver-green leaves and absolutely loaded with tight clusters of small, intensely orange berries that cling to the branches like something out of a painting. The color is startling, not pale orange, not yellow orange, deep, saturated, almost neon orange, the color of a warning or a treasure, depending on who is looking. The plant grows at high altitudes in the Himalayan region. Across the Tibetan Plateau through Siberia, along the coasts of northern Europe, and in the salt flats and sandy coastal margins where almost nothing else can survive, it tolerates salt concentrations that would kill most agricultural crops within a season. It tolerates drought. It tolerates extreme cold. It fixes nitrogen in the soil around it, improving the land it grows on rather than depleting it. And its berries contain something that took modern science a century to fully understand, and document a nutritional profile so dense and so complete that researchers have called it one of the most remarkable plants on Earth. The plant does something unusual for a fruit-bearing shrub. It does not wait to be planted in rich, prepared garden soil. It seeks out the most difficult growing conditions available and thrives in them. On coastal dunes, where salt spray kills conventional plants, on stripped mining land where the topsoil has been removed, on eroded hillsides where nothing else will hold, on riverbanks that flood and dry repeatedly, sea buckthorn does not just survive these conditions, it improves them. Its root system carries nitrogen-fixing bacteria that enrich the soil over time, making degraded land gradually more productive. A plant that grows where nothing else will and leaves the soil better than it found it is not a weed to be cleared. It is a gift that most of the agricultural world has never learned to accept. But before the science, there is the history. And the history goes back a long time. Let's go back over 1,000 years to the Tibetan Plateau. At high altitude, in some of the harshest growing conditions on the planet, Tibetan communities had a plant they called shaji. They pressed oil from its berries and used it for everything. They rubbed it on burns, on wounds, on skin cracked by the brutal altitude wind. They drank it for stomach ailments. They gave it to their horses, and this is where the name comes from. Because horses fed on sea buckthorn berries were reportedly so healthy and shiny-coated that early observers named the plant from the Greek words for horse and brightness. The Chinese documented it in their traditional medicine texts over 1,200 years ago. It appeared in Tibetan medical literature, in Mongolian healing practice, in Ayurvedic texts from the Indian subcontinent. It was used by the ancient Greeks along the European coastline. Every culture that independently encountered this plant, on 3 different continents across centuries of separate development, came to the same conclusion. The oil from these berries was extraordinary. That kind of convergence is not coincidence. It is evidence. In 1987, the Chinese government declared sea buckthorn a priority research crop. By 2003, China had planted over 2 million acres of sea buckthorn, not just for the oil, but because the plant's nitrogen-fixing root system and deep roots make it one of the best anti-desertification crops in existence. China used it to stabilize eroding hillsides, restore stripped mining land, and halt the spread of desert into agricultural areas. Today, China maintains the largest sea buckthorn cultivation program in the world. The Soviet space program fed sea buckthorn products to cosmonauts. Russian military pilots received sea buckthorn preparations to protect their eyes from radiation. This plant has been taken seriously, very seriously, by governments, military programs, and traditional healers across 3 continents for over a millennium. Now here is the science that explains why, and this is the part that should stop you cold. Most cooking oils contain 1 or 2 types of fatty acids. Olive oil is prized for its oleic acid, which is omeganine. Canola is marketed for its omega-3 content. Fish oil is taken as a supplement specifically for omega-3 and omega-7. Then, 2. Get all 4 major omega fatty acids from a single source. 3, 6, 7, and 9. You would normally need to combine multiple different foods. The human body needs all 4. They each play different roles in cardiovascular health, inflammation, regulation, cell membrane function, and insulin sensitivity. Getting adequate amounts of all four from a single plant is, nutritionally speaking, something that almost never happens. Sea buckthorn does it. Researchers have confirmed that sea buckthorn oil is one of the only plant sources on Earth that contains all four omega fatty acids in meaningful concentrations in a single oil. That alone would make it remarkable. But it does not stop there. The berry and seed oil together contain over 190 bioactive compounds: vitamins A, B1, B2, C, D, E, K, and P, carotenoids, flavonoids, amino acids, phenols, folic acid, 20 mineral elements, and the compound that has attracted the most research attention in recent years, omega-7, also known as palmitoleic acid. Palmitoleic acid is a fatty acid that occurs naturally in human skin and cell membranes. Your body already knows how to use it because your body already makes small amounts of it. Research has linked omega-7 to improved insulin sensitivity, cardiovascular protection, and anti-inflammatory effects. It is the fatty acid that cold water fish are sometimes taken for, but sea buckthorn berry oil contains it in higher concentrations than most fish oil sources, from a plant that requires no ocean fishing and no industrial processing to produce. Now compare that to what you are currently pouring into your pan. Canola oil was invented in a Canadian laboratory in the 1970s. Before 1974, it did not exist as a consumer product. It was developed as a modified version of rapeseed oil. Rapeseed being a plant that had historically been used for industrial lubrication and lamp fuel, not food. Scientists bred out the compounds that made it unsuitable for human consumption and created a new cultivar. They named it canola from Canada, and oil low acid. It does contain some omega-3, which is genuinely beneficial. But it contains none of the omega-7 that sea buckthorn provides. It contains none of the 190 bioactive compounds. It has no centuries of traditional medicinal use. It was not fed to cosmonauts. No traditional culture ever pressed it and called it extraordinary. It was engineered in a decade and scaled to global dominance in a generation through industrial agriculture and food system infrastructure that already existed for rapeseed. The research does not come from a supplement company's marketing. It comes from peer-reviewed journals. Meta-analysis reviewed the accumulated research on sea buckthorn oil and documented significant evidence for cardiovascular protection, anti-inflammatory activity, and antioxidant effects. Studies have shown it may support glucose and insulin balance, protect the skin from UV damage, reduce symptoms of dry eyes and mucosal dryness, and promote wound healing. The berry is so rich in vitamin C that gram for gram it contains more than almost any other fruit, roughly 12 times the concentration found in an orange. In 1987, the Chinese government declared sea buckthorn a priority research crop. By 2003, China had planted over 2 million acres of sea buckthorn, not just for the oil, but because the plant's nitrogen-fixing root system and deep roots make it one of the best anti-desertification crops in existence. China used it to stabilize eroding hillsides, restore stripped mining land, and halt the spread of desert into agricultural areas. Today, China maintains the largest sea buckthorn cultivation program in the world. The Soviet space program fed sea buckthorn products to cosmonauts. Russian military pilots received sea buckthorn preparations to protect their eyes from radiation exposure at high altitude. This plant has been taken seriously, very seriously, by governments, military programs, and traditional healers across 3 continents for over a millennium. And yet, in the country that invented industrial agriculture, that feeds itself on the output of the world's most advanced food processing infrastructure, sea buckthorn never happened. It was not introduced, it was not planted at scale, it was not promoted. You can find it in the supplement section of health food stores, in expensive small bottles sold as exotic skincare products, in niche online retailers that cater to people already searching for it by name. But walk into any mainstream American grocery store and look for sea buckthorn oil in the cooking oil aisle, you will not find it. Not between the canola and the soybean, not next to the olive oil, not anywhere on the shelf. The oil that outperforms canola in nutritional completeness that has fed populations across Asia and Europe for 1,000 years. That the Chinese government considered important enough to plant on 2 million acres simply does not exist in American mainstream food retail. So here is the question. If this plant contains all 4 omegas, over 190 bioactive compounds, more vitamin C than almost any other fruit, and grows in conditions where conventional crops fail, why have you never seen its oil on a grocery shelf next to the canola and the soybean and the sunflower? Here is what should make you furious. The modern vegetable oil industry is built on one core requirement: industrial scalability. The crops that dominate the global cooking oil market, soybean, canola, corn, sunflower, palm, were all selected or engineered for one defining characteristic. They can be grown in massive monocultures, on flat, accessible land, harvested by machine, and processed in centralized industrial facilities at volumes that make the cost per unit commercially competitive. The business model requires enormous scale and standardized processing. It does not accommodate plants that grow on steep, eroded hillsides at high altitude, that produce berries in tight clusters, requiring careful hand harvesting that yield a berry oil and a seed oil with different nutritional profiles, requiring different extraction methods, and that grow in the salt margins where industrial equipment cannot easily reach. Complexity is the enemy of margin. And sea buckthorn is complex in every way that matters to a food processing corporation running on quarterly earnings targets and shareholder expectations of consistent, predictable returns. Sea buckthorn cannot be industrialized on the same terms as soybean or canola. Its berries are fragile. They burst when handled roughly. The fruit oil and seed oil require different processing. The color of the fruit oil, that deep saturated orange, would be alarming to consumers accustomed to the pale, colorless oils that industrial processing produces. The flavor is distinctive, not neutral. None of these are scientific problems. They are all industrial and marketing problems. The plant was never a technical failure. It was a commercial inconvenience. And so while China planted 2 million acres and the Soviet military fed it to cosmonauts, the American food industry looked at sea buckthorn and decided that the math did not work. Not because the oil was inferior, because the supply chain required to bring it to mass market at a price point competitive with canola was not worth building when canola was already everywhere, already cheap, already accepted, and already generating the kind of returns that publicly traded food companies report to shareholders every quarter. The knowledge was not destroyed. It was simply never moved. It stayed in the Himalayan communities that had used it for 1,000 years, in the Chinese government research programs, in the supplement sections of health food stores where small bottles of sea buckthorn oil sell for prices that reflect the genuine cost of producing an oil that cannot be industrialized at scale. The average American consumer never encountered it because the average American consumer gets their nutritional knowledge from marketing, and nobody with a canola-sized marketing budget ever had a reason to market sea buckthorn. Here is what you can do right now. Sea buckthorn is a real plant that you can actually grow. It is available from nurseries across the northern United States and Canada, where it grows reliably in zones 3 through 7, some of the coldest growing zones in the country. It is one of the few productive fruit plants that does well in harsh, cold, saline, or alkaline soils where conventional fruit trees fail. You need a male and a female plant to produce berries. Most suppliers sell them in pairs for exactly this reason. Plan for that when you order. Plant them in full sun. They do not need rich soil. They actively prefer poor, well-drained, even sandy or salty ground. They do not need fertilizer. They need almost nothing except space, because they spread through root suckers and, given time, will establish a productive thicket that produces berries every autumn for decades. The plants are thorny? Be honest about that. Harvesting the berries requires patience and gloves. The clusters are extremely tight and the branches bristle with sharp spines. Traditional harvesting methods that communities across the Himalayas and Siberia developed over centuries include cutting entire fruiting branches in late autumn and freezing them. Then shaking or stripping the frozen berries free, the cold makes them release more easily and cleanly than harvesting at room temperature. Others use a hair comb or a fork to strip berries directly from the branch into a waiting container. Neither method is fast, but the result is worth understanding. Once you have the berries, the oil can be extracted in 2 ways, depending on what you want. The seed oil extracted from the small hard seeds inside each berry is paler, more neutral in flavor, and better suited for cooking. A small home oil press of the type used for flaxseed, hempseed, or other small oil seeds will handle camellia seeds effectively. The fruit pulp oil, the deeply orange fraction containing the highest omega-7 and carotenoid concentration, is the one most prized for health purposes. It can be obtained by making a whole berry puree or juice and allowing the oil layer to separate and rise to the surface, then skimming it. Traditional communities used simple cloth pressing and gravity separation methods for this for centuries. Neither approach requires anything that cannot be done in an average kitchen. The fruit oil is not neutral. It is deeply orange, powerfully flavored, and not designed to disappear into a recipe the way canola does. Use it for finishing drizzled over finished dishes, mixed into dressings, taken by the spoonful as a daily nutritional supplement. The seed oil, being more neutral, handles moderate heat cooking better. A small bottle of commercial sea buckthorn oil in a health food store costs between $30 and $50 for a small quantity. What you press from your own plants costs the price of a few nursery plants and a few hours of autumn work, and it keeps producing for the lifetime of the shrub. That supplement in the health food store, the small amber bottle of sea buckthorn oil with the $40 price tag, is what the market built when it could not industrialize the plant itself. It took what it could not scale into a commodity and turned it into a luxury, priced it out of the daily kitchen and into the supplement aisle, moved it from food to medicine, and in doing so, ensured that the people who most needed an affordable, complete, nutritionally dense oil remained buying the industrially processed canola that the market could deliver cheaply, while the plant that outperforms it grew on forgotten hillsides in Siberia and Tibet, tended by communities that never stopped knowing what it was worth. The berry is still orange. The soil is still salty. The omegas are still all four, still in the same remarkable plant, still waiting for anyone willing to grow a thorny shrub in their back corner and press the oil themselves. The industry decided it was too inconvenient to sell you this. That decision was made entirely about profit. It was not made about your health. Now, you know the difference. The industry made its decision based on what could be scaled and sold. You can make a very different and deliberate decision based on what actually feeds you. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like and every share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.